Shalom. So I am here with Anthony Grant. And Anthony is on the Bridges of Meaning Discord server. He actually lives not that far away from me, within driving distance. And I actually got to go and meet Anthony, and and we had dinner. And one of the things that we've actually been talking about a lot, which I think is really important, is the role of gender and femininity and masculinity in society. And also, we both have a background in Freemasonry, because when I was young, I joined the Demolays, and I was involved a little bit in Freemasonry, which I actually think is one of the things that our society is kind of missing out on. And you're about to become worshipful master, I believe, of your lodge. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about. So first of all, would you agree with me that gender, actual femininity, masculinity are useful and important things in society, that gender roles aren't this horrible oppressive thing that we should get rid of, and that our society would somehow be better without these ideas of sex and gender and masculinity and femininity? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's usefulness to the gender roles. Not that all gender roles are created equal. Like, I'm sure there's like some exaggerations where, men aren't supposed to be baking, like men can bake, like there could be exaggerations. But at the core, there's a problem that exists, I think, that necessitates gender roles. And this is like really like hard to escape. And I think I heard Brett Weinstein say this paradigm is that like there's like two type of gametes that make us, and there's like the seeker, the ones that go out, and the ones that are stationary. And that kind of paradigm is duplicated throughout a lot of different aspects of nature. And they typically, the stationary gametes is the more of the feminine, and the seeker gametes, the one that actually are mobile and go out and try to like pollinate the other like stationary one, or impregnate the other one, is like basically that type of motion. Like that is pretty basic, and I don't think you can get rid of that. If you have gametes that are paired and there's one that's stationary and there's one that's more mobile, that's going to have impact that isn't just socially constructed, because it's actually fundamental to the existence of those two, of the pair itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. A lot of people who like to garb themselves in the idea of we trust the science, and we are, the people who are more scientifically minded. Actually, it seems that a lot of what they do, especially when it comes to gender, is deny the biological basis for things, obfuscate what biology and science has to say about it. I do want to say I disagree with Jordan Peterson, which is heresy. But I very much disagree with this idea that he has, that what our society is suffering from is an excess of femininity. And he does say that. He believes there's an excess of femininity. And I actually think it's the opposite problem. What has happened is, over the past 50 years, we've basically told a lot of women that a lot of what women used to contribute to our society is not valuable. And for them to be successful as women is for them to be successful as men instead, right? All the women should be being lawyers and doctors and engineers and all that, when classically in our society, what has happened is that men and women together have fulfilled various roles. And one thing women really accomplished was keeping the family together and keeping the neighborhood together, and all of the uh, social plumbing, I call it, right? Where getting to know people and matching this person with that person, that matchmaking and all of these things, which are incredibly important, and we've completely devalued. And so our society is falling apart, right? We talk about the coming apart, Charles Murray's book, and well, obviously it's coming apart because we don't have the glue, which is all the women who were throwing the cocktail parties and making matches and doing all that stuff. And we need, even if we're going to say this doesn't have to be necessarily feminine, fine, let men do it. But we need to do it. We need to actually pay attention to our society and have socialites, even if those socialites are men.
Yeah, it's funny because you actually sparked my mind on something else, and I want to play with this idea with you and see what you think. Because when you were saying that women were like kind of were the social glue, and kind of like that was their role, and I was thinking like I immediately felt like my perspective on the way a lot of women act nowadays towards each other is not trying to make things coherent, but actually are adversarial against each other. And it made me think of two things that I find connected to that. And one is materialism, and the other, which is related, is a lack of modesty. And when people talk about a lack of modesty, sometimes, especially concerning women, what they think is like, showing like cleavage and things like that. And I think it's more of the flaunting of how you're superior, is more of the lack of modesty to me. And that combined with materialism itself, kind of like, I think has made our culture of women kind of showing how they have it better than each other, one-upping. And men do
A
it too.
competitive nature, yeah.
Yeah, that
Everything's become a competition.
right. And so, and that's not to say, oh, how dare a woman be competitive, but if men, so like if you have one group that's more competitive like men, and they compete on the like the dominance hierarchy thing, and then women kind of like may pick off from the top. But if you have women competing against each other in the same way, then there really is nobody doing that social glue, that matchmaking and like the cohesion. And so then it becomes a little bit more of a culture of every man for himself, and then in this instance every man and woman for themselves. And I feel like materialism and kind of lack of what do you call it, lack of modesty
Mm.
is
Humility
humility.
and a sense of charity towards other people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things. One of the things that I'm just thinking back to the Kathy Newman interview, where Jordan Peterson was saying that he trains women to be more confrontational and be less agreeable. And the that really comes from, and honestly, even that word neuroticism, right? We've kind of basically set our society male good, female bad,
Mm,
masculine good, feminine bad. And so being agreeable like women tend to be, not being as competitive, like, you know, we've we're we've lost balance. And when Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying, who actually I believe she's the smarter of the pair, when they talk about Chesterton's fence, right?
mm,
Not removing things until you
you
actually
know the
know
purpose.
what their purpose
Yeah.
is. Um, I mean, I think it's become very obvious to us that the problem was not that we had women filling certain roles, which, it's become kind of well, it is an insult to say somebody is a scold, right? But that's what women did in society, like be a scold. And there are physiological differences between men and women. This one hit me really hard. So the average woman sees more colors than the average man, and it's a big difference, to the point where there are women who see colors that it is who can differentiate between colors that it is physiologically impossible for a man to be able to see, right? And we've always, I mean, I certainly always heard, like, well, why are women talking about taupe and like all these different colors? And well, there's a physiological difference there. Men see fewer colors than women do. And if I were to see more colors, then obviously, we don't have any competitions. How many colors can you see? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and to not take advantage of that, to not recognize that our physiological differences, look, women do miraculous things in being mothers that so I'm sorry, that's of course going to take a toll on your body and your capabilities in other ways. And have you heard about the male mammals have fat tails thing?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Okay, so this is one of the things that are uncomfortable to talk about. But when you talk about the bell curve, right? You have the curve of
Normal
distribution,
distribution.
right? So
Mm,
what happens is that male mammals always have a flatter distribution than female mammals do. Okay, so female mammals will, while the average may be the same, or it might not even be the same. For example, when we talk about height, right? The average male is taller than the average female, but also the distribution is flatter, so the tails are fatter, okay? So male mammals have fat tails, meaning that the distribution, so if you look, for example, shortest man ever, I mean, shortest human ever, right? You would expect, since women are generally shorter on average than men are, that the shortest person would be female. That's the
mm,
expectation. But if you look it up, you will see that the shortest person is still a man, even though men tend to be taller than women, because the distribution is flatter. And so in the extremes, even for things that women are better at men at, for example, being shorter, right? So you would think a woman would be able to beat out men in general, right? Women would be able to beat out men in general as far as being shorter, but they're not. They can't, because the distribution, and it has to do with being mammals because of, you know, the necessity for women to have to group more tightly towards the center, because every female should be able to breed, as opposed to in mammals, generally it's not the case that all males breed, right? Some males breed and a lot of them don't, right? So it makes sense that we have this different distribution. And part of what that means is, when you're talking about 7 billion people, I'm sorry, but the best chess player is never going to be a woman. It's almost impossible. It's statistically almost impossible. And that's why all the grandmasters, I believe there's 1 or 2 female grandmasters of chess in the world. And so what, as far as, you know, being these part of that exceptional group of geniuses and people who accomplish all kinds of things, because of the distribution, you're always going to have a much larger number of men on the outskirts, right? Both the dumbest and the smartest men, humans, are going to be men, right? And
yeah, that reminds me of the thing where they talk about how the inequality about how the richest people are predominantly men, but then if you look on the other side, some of the most destitute people in the world are also men. So it's like that same type of thing you're talking about.
well, males are expendable. That's you know, biologically, you don't, how many, you know, this is why polygamy existed, right? Because you could go to war and lose a bunch of men, and that didn't matter, because you know, one man can impregnate many women. One woman can only become pregnant from one man at a time. It's just how mammal biology works, but you're not allowed to say this stuff.
Yeah, it's weird because that's a really hard biological inescapable truth, is that I think I looked it up before. I think, like, what was the record for how many children any single woman had?
Right.
And it was pretty high. It might have, I can't remember what it was. It might have been like 30 or something like that. It might have even been higher. But still, that was like at the extreme. But if you think about what a man could do, could a man, a man could easily have 30 children, no problem.
So apparently, I believe it's 10% of all males in Mongolia are direct male descendants of Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Right? The man had, I don't know, 20, 30 wives, and
Yeah.
he had hundreds of kids.
Yeah.
And it's just inescapable. And part of what really bothers me is that I feel we are not educating our children correctly when we tell them certain lies. And one of those lies is telling women that they're going to be happy with a career without having children. And we're imposing that on a lot of people. And the fact is, most most women are not going to be happy not having children. So when you lie to people like that, it's really damaging when women find themselves in their late 30s or in their 40s and they desperately want to have children and they can't. That betrayal doesn't go away. We lied to them, and they spent a lot of years pursuing things. And I've seen this a lot in women who have done everything right and pursued all the things that were supposed to make them happy. And it's like, why are we lying to our kids? Why we need to stop lying to our kids.
Yeah, it's I guess when you say that, it's somewhat perplexing that there would be women who would fall for that, because in a lot of movies that you, rom-coms even, you actually see the tale of a man who thinks that it's all about the money and success until he finds a woman who changes his mind. And so for some reason, it seems as though we can entertain the idea that a man will come to his senses about wanting a family.
Well,
But
there's a lot of stories we can tell and a lot of stories we can't. This is part of the reason I honestly, I can't watch any television or movies mostly. I mean, a few times they will surprise me, but unless somebody actually tells me, oh, this is different, this is not one of those shows where you can just know that, yeah, the, all of the hopeful leftist cliches will come true, right? That the woman can beat the man in physical combat,
oh yeah.
right? All of those things that supposedly are true, which just aren't. And so, I mean, I've given up on watching television. I really have. I've totally given up on watching modern, like, things that have been written recently, because they're just so formulaic. They're propaganda. That's what they are. They're propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how much it has infiltrated our storylines to where it does have a detriment. It's funny because some people do realize it, some people in the gaming industry, I guess I've noticed that, where the kind of like leftist tropes will infiltrate the storyline and it will degrade the storyline itself. And some people in the gaming niche or industry, the people who are fans, kind of like get pissed off at that.
Well,
I have
that's
seen
what
that.
Gamergate was. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Were you
yeah.
aware of
Yeah,
Gamergate?
yeah. I did hear of Gamergate.
Honestly, when I first heard of Gamergate, I didn't understand what was going on at all. And I was like, what are you talking about? What men's rights activists? Like, I've never known any men's rights activists, right? Anybody who, you hear about these, people out there,
Yeah.
who are, obsessed about, for example, until it went away, it's actually not even a thing anymore, that only men had to register for the draft. Like, it was a big thing in their lives. How come women don't have to register for the draft? And my response to that was, who even cares? I mean, I registered for the draft, yeah, because I was told to, but I wasn't expecting to be drafted. Who's been drafted? Nobody's been drafted in my lifetime, right? So you're worrying about this hypothetical difference between men and women, right? It's just simply not a real world situation. But then, look, I've certainly spent more than my fair share of time listening to Sargon of Akkad, who came out of Gamergate. And it's funny how Gamergate has actually become, it is a cultural focal point. I mean, we turn to the men from, and women from, Christina Hoff Sommers, based mom. She became famous because of Gamergate. Milo Yiannopoulos became famous because of Gamergate. And then these people moved into politics. And the question becomes, well, how does Gamergate translate to politics? But it did, and it does.
Yeah, no, like that's what I was saying. Like it was interesting when I did see that there was like a pocket of society that was resistant to that kind of like leftist propaganda takeover, and it was interesting to see that response and how strong it was. And I was glad it happened, because I guess it showed that certain people kind of still have some fight in them. And it doesn't even have to be like left versus right. It's just the fact that people are like, nah, I want, I believe in this or whatever.
It ended up, I mean, so you look at the platforms which I'm on, which is YouTube, Twitch, and Discord. Those all began and continue to be mostly gamer platforms.
Yeah.
Right. And even though there are some women, honestly, it's what, 80% male at least. So I think part of where our society went wrong is our decision that there can be and should no longer be male only spaces. I think we need male only spaces. We need female only spaces. And this is another thing that really gets me. I don't know if you've looked at the educational stuff, but it seems from every study that I've seen that's been a serious study, single sex education just works so much better than co-education, but we still insist on it. And it's like, you're not doing the girls any favors. They actually learn better in female classrooms.
Yeah. No, I mean, that I'm not for co-ed in every instance. Me with my background in masonry, I'm progressive in the fact that I am not against women being masons, but I am against women being masons in the same lodge as men being. So
look, I think we need fraternities and we need sororities and we need them to be separate. And this is something that we have talked about a bit, is how we can, unfortunately, the problem with Freemasonry is that it has been so tainted by its history that, for example, a member of Paul's church, PVK's church, is actually specifically denied it. They cannot become Masons. I know that within Catholicism and certainly among traditional Catholics, Masonry is frowned upon. And I think part of moving this IDW, JBP, PVK thing forward is having a real life organization where we are, and that's why I wanted to meet as many people as I could on the fishing trip, right? Where we are physically in real life meeting And it seems to me that a very important aspect of that is that it actually be gender segregated.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure how much PBK will like that. You know, with his whole reconciliation thing, but and how leftist he is. But I sincerely think we need a men's organization, and we need a woman's organization, and we need them to be different. I don't know how many times do you remember the knitting club that there was on the Discord
Yes,
server?
I do remember. That's not going on anymore.
I haven't seen it. I mean, I've also not been on as much as I used to be. Certainly not on Voice, but look, that was important. Having a knitting circle, and it was female. Certainly, I barged in more than I should have, and I think other people barged in. Men did barge in, but yeah, I think what we're lacking is femininity, and femininity in the old school femininity. We're lacking those stereotypical women that we've so much poo-pooed, who were the scolds and the socialite and the busybodies, and you know, the neighborhood watch, and keeping track of everyone and everything. I remember as a kid, I just thought it was hilarious that one of my aunts, we could ask her about anybody and she could tell you their exact family relationship. So, you know, being Persian and Jewish, it's a small enough community that pretty much every Persian Jew I meet is related to me somehow. And it's not a close connection, right? So, like, for example, my brother-in-law is also, so his aunt is married to my grandmother's first cousin, right? So we're basically not related at all, but we have this relationship. And I had an aunt who, you could ask her about any two people and she could tell you exactly how they were related, right? And it was we used to joke about her having a computer, right? And she would put it in her computer and spit it out. But honestly, she was serving she was performing a service within the community of knowing how everyone fit together, right? And we've completely lost that. It's actually, I think, you know, it's a real loss, and we need, if we are not going to have, I mean, I certainly don't think we need to like tell little girls, oh, you should, you know, you should grow up to be a matchmaker. Have little matchmaker Barbies they can play with. Right? But
Right.
I think at least we need to acknowledge the roles that women did fulfill, and that femininity contributed to our society, and try to emulate that.
Yeah, it's funny because I think of like what will happen if we don't, and I wonder if it'll just lead to the overall degradation of society, or whether something else will come in and replace it that won't be as good and kind of distort the fabric of our society.
Well, we see the loneliness crisis, and I think part of that
Yes.
is the fact people aren't getting married. And when they do get married, they get married a lot older. And there's the hookup culture, right? And honestly,
Yeah.
I I think our society is seeing a lot of negative results that as adults we aren't talking about.
Yeah, like no, I think that's huge. The loneliness, the depression overall, the hookup culture, which actually exacerbates both of those, the loneliness and the depression. And it's funny. Okay, so this is this is one thing that I really don't like about our culture is that we get on the idea about rape culture, and in all our talking about rape culture, we don't. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of talk about how that actually springs forth from hookup culture or even alcohol abuse, like or you like drinking, like it's it's like the society rebelled against their parents of being too puritanical or purity culture, and so they're like, like just let's be free and kind of like unintentional and kind of casual about sex, and then just seem to forget about that and how that could have been a contributor to what our society would call rape culture, like that casual, because they're talking about consent, and consent itself is a way of being intentional and formal, but intentionality and formality is not the same thing as being casual. So it's like, let's be casual, but actually let's not be casual. Let's drink, which is kind of against intentionality and like and actually being organized and stuff like. So it's like we, I guess, decided to try to have our cake and eat it too, or just didn't realize what we sacrificed by moving away from a more traditional perspective on dating itself.
So Camille Paglia actually talks about this, how when she went off to college, there was this mother, for kind of like the this woman who told them what time they had to be back home and stuff like that, and they rebelled against it um, in their dorms. And she's like, well, we realized that we were risking rape, but we were saying, you know what, we're adults, let us go ahead and take these risks. But now people are like, I was listening to Benjamin Boyce, and he was talking to this woman whose whole thing was, well, when are we going to have no rapes? And why is it too much for me to ask that there be no rapes? And I was like, you're an idiot. and I meant that, right? It's Benjamin was being Benjamin Boyce, which is treating her respectfully and trying to engage with what she had to say. And I was like, no, I need to stop watching this. And I did, because we really need to stop listening to idiots, right? Because look, the interpersonal respect, which I would definitely have with people that I'm individually, when you're sitting next to someone and they say stupid things, right? You kind of get silent, and everybody else, like, you look at other people, and it's
Yeah.
clear to everyone who's saying ridiculous things, right? And but when you talk about it on the internet, right? If I'm having a discussion with you and you're saying idiotic things, and I'm pretending that what you're saying isn't idiotic, and I'm, treating you with respect, that's elevating a obviously stupid idea. And the idea that we could have no murders or no theft or no rape or no, like, this is that there would be zero murders, the world that would entail is horrific.
Mhm.
And any adult, right, if you're not talking to a 5-year-old, any adult who seriously proposes that we should try to move toward a society where there's no murder, no theft, no rape, anything like that, right? That person is an idiot, and we need to stop. And I'm really like, this has become my mission to stop listening to idiots.
Yeah, it's a lot of people are kind of like seduced by this idealistic utopia that for any person who has a sense about them that isn't completely naive knows that this could never occur. It's okay to minimize how much rape and murder and stealing is, but to suppose that we could, in fact, get rid of it altogether, I think people sell that and don't even try to get this. This is why bullshitting in politics is so effective, because people are able to sell you something that like that, like, yeah, like, wouldn't it be great to get rid of like all murder, rape, theft, and etc. And people are like, yeah, let's sign up for that. And knowing damn well the person who's promising you that could not possibly deliver on it, but we've somehow become accustomed to being sold that bullshit itself. Yeah.
So this was one of my things. So you know what a shibboleth is?
No.
Okay, so this is from the Bible, and the word shibboleth in Hebrew means grain. And what had happened in the Bible was there was a civil war, and the people from the tribe of Benjamin would say the word shibboleth differently than everybody else. So, so
yes,
you've heard
yes,
of this.
yes.
So
with
they,
Jephthah.
right. So they so what they would do is make people say shibboleth, and somebody who said it like the Benjaminite, they would kill them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this word shibboleth has become in English, or shibboleth. I'm sorry, that's one of the
Yeah. No,
that's how you guys say it. Yeah,
yeah,
shibboleth. So
yeah,
I know the Hebrew shibboleth, right?
yeah.
And so my proposed shibboleth for politicians is we should ask politicians, should we spend $1 billion? And I'm talking obviously of public funds, right? We're not talking if you have $1 billion and you want to spend $1 billion, that's up to you. We're talking about publicly. Should the public spend $1 billion to save a baby's life? And if you do not immediately say no, you should be absolutely prohibited. You shouldn't even be allowed to vote. Okay? Forget you shouldn't be allowed to like be elected to office if you are not automatically like, no, we will not spend $1 billion to save anybody's life, even if it's a baby. And I don't care how cute the baby is, right? If you can't say that, then you're just not an adult.
Yeah, no, yeah. You're not a good custodian, for sure. You're not a good steward. You're appealing to this sentiment, kind of like sentimentality that exists. That's funny, yeah. No, it's funny that you brought up. Yeah, we say shibboleth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no,
you say it wrong. So that's
I
the
know, but it's pronounced shibboleth.
Shibboleth, yeah.
Shibboleth.
Yeah.
Shibboleth.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I love that story. Yeah.
And honestly, I think we need to start having tests like that. Like, what kind of an adult doesn't realize this, right? Well, if you understand what $1 billion is, which a lot of people don't, right? They don't really comprehend what it means to spend $1 billion, which is another thing that kills me. And it's like, that's $1,000 million. Right? For $1,000 million, do you know how many people's lives you could improve? Right? No, honestly, I mean, if you do the math, people have this really idiotic idea that you can't put a price on a life. And it's like, no, 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 no. We always put price on life. That's how we make decisions, right? About, for example, like how much is it going to cost to have some program, right? If you have kids lunches, free lunches for kids, that's gonna that's gonna make them live longer, right? It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So
You know what's funny? It's funny because I agree with you, but at the same time, in your line of work, you just gave up like your best sales pitch. You can't put a price on a life, right? Put all that money.
no, but that's the thing in my line of work, and I'm, in case anybody doesn't know, I'm an insurance broker. That's all we do is put price on life.
Yeah, but you can like get them all excited, but like like guilt them no matter how much they put in.
Okay, so this is part of the reason that I'm an insurance broker and not an insurance agent. Is I represent people buying insurance, and it's actually quite funny. Like I keep on people keep on coming to me and saying, "Oh, I need life insurance," and I'm like, "Do you? Hold on." And like I start telling them, "No, you don't need life insurance," and they're absolutely shocked. They're like, why are you telling me I don't need life insurance? Like, I've never had, I come and I'm trying to buy something from someone, and they're like, no, 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 I won't sell it to you. And I actually had this recently. I had a client, and she wanted to buy a lot of very expensive life insurance. And we're talking, I mean, it was like a $15,000 commission for me. And I was like, no, you don't need life insurance. And my mom, who's recently started working with me, she's like, what are you doing? She's rich. Let her buy it. And I'm like, but she doesn't need it. My mom was like, yeah, but you could use the $15,000. And of course I could use the $15,000, but that's just not me. And I realize that. And it's, look, I like to pretend that I believe enough in God to believe that, like, right. And I don't know that I actually have that level of faith, but it's easy to say that I do.
Right.
But
No, that's funny. I just want to say, like, you just enlightened me into the difference between an insurance sales agent and an insurance broker.
right, most people don't know, and part of the problem is that that difference is not the same difference in real estate. So a real estate agent works for a real estate broker, and that's not how insurance works. So a lot of people get it confused. But yes,
Yeah.
in insurance, an insurance agent works for the insurance company, whereas the insurance broker represents the person buying insurance. So yeah, generally you should, if you can, buy insurance from a broker, not from an agent. Yeah. But first of all, that's not always possible. For example, in California, life and health insurance can only be sold by an agent. So I'm actually an agent and a broker. And what I do is I tell my clients that as a broker, I agree to represent their best interest as well. But most people aren't. And it's not like I can't charge people for that service. But I just don't feel right. I mean, how would you feel if you get a $15,000 check for selling someone something that they shouldn't be buying? Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
but
I feel you. I feel you. I guess it depends on how desperate I was.
Yeah, look, yeah, honestly, so I can say that I'm comfortable. I'm certainly not starving, but this is another thing that we don't tell people is, and they've done studies with this. After a certain amount of money, more
Mm,
money just doesn't make you
yeah.
happier. It really doesn't. Once you are making enough, and honestly, for me, you know, I I spend all the money I need to, but I don't spend much money because I'm not the type of person to be going out and to clubs and buying nice clothes. I buy my clothes at Costco because it's convenient and it's fine. And honestly, I wouldn't even know how to take care of like expensive
Oh
clothes
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah,
The
yeah.
expensive clothes are hard to take
They
care
are, they
of.
are, they are
and
definitely.
and I spill food on myself all the time, and it's like I don't want expensive clothes. Why would I want expensive clothes?
Yeah, they are a lot to take care of if you get like that. It's frustrating. It's I know because sometimes I like get into buying some expensive clothes and I have to be like extra careful for sure. Make sure that I read the tags. Make sure I don't like put it in the wrong cycle in the wash or dryer. And I've done it to where I ruined some expensive clothes and I get so angry at myself. I'm like
And honestly, I mean, I know that there are people who know the difference, but I can't tell the difference between expensive clothes and non-expensive clothes. I'm sorry, I can't. I really would not know. Like, I have a nephew who like he knows this stuff, right? He knows everything about fashion. Like he will tell you, like if somebody's wearing shoes, like he will tell you how much those shoes cost, right? And but I honestly I couldn't tell the difference. I really could not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's people different notice different things for sure. I keep looking at this background that I have on my TV.
Mm.
It like distracts me sometimes. It's an image of this church that I went to. I think it's like Saint Mary Magdalene. It's like in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was just beautiful. And sometimes it just like catches my eye, like all the amazing art on it. It's a Catholic church. Sometimes you get those like crazy cathedrals. Cathedral. Catholics have cathedrals, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. uh, So that's another thing. Like I don't have anything on my walls at home, right? And I was actually I really liked the way you had your books with that thing that
Mm,
they look like they're
yeah,
floating on the walls,
yeah.
and it was like you know those. Sure, it's nice to like be in a place that looks nice. It's just yeah, I guess I mean that's one of Jordan Peterson's rules is try to make one room in your house beautiful
Mm,
as you can make it. And it's like I I mean that's it just seems I guess in a sense it is kind of like the prayer corners that people would have in their homes and altars and things like that. But it just for me, I don't know, it was never a priority, and I guess maybe it should be, like because beauty does matter.
yeah,
It
yeah.
does. So when we make our men's group, we're gonna have to have like fashion classes and
Dude, I, w- I would do that, or I know some people who would be even better than me, and if I could rope them in, I would do that too. I personally like if I could pull it off, if I could get anything I wanted when I'm in the East, at the lodge, I would have
So for the
everybody.
people who don't know, being in the East means being the leader.
Yeah, the
Go
leader,
ahead. Yes.
the oriental chair, as they would call it.
Yes.
So when I'm elected to sit in the East in the oriental chair, if I could have anything I wanted just by snapping my fingers, I would have every officer in that lodge have a tailor-made suit. Like, that's what I
So
would do.
look, there is something to garments, right? I've actually kind of been nudging PVK because I think he really needs to start wearing his collar. And
Mm,
I didn't know that CRC pastors wore collars, but
I didn't know that either.
yeah, but that so there are he showed me a picture of his dad wearing a collar. His dad used to wear a collar. And it's
Huh.
like, as we're moving into the liturgical thing, like Father Eric, he always wears his collar, right? And I think there is something to uniforms and raiments and, you know, dressing up that, you know, with our grunge culture and our hippies them, and we've lost something there. So yeah, let's I'm gonna take up a petition that PVK has to start wearing his collar on
Collar.
Fridays.
I want to see him wear it. I haven't seen him wear it. I haven't seen him in it at all.
So
That'd be good.
he said he's considered wearing it just for the Eucharist, because for the Eucharist he thinks, you know, it should be special. Um, but yeah, I think honestly, frankly, I think he should wear it on his videos, because I think that we're at a point in society where we want to see that. We
Mm-hmm.
want to see people dressing up in and taking something seriously like that.
Yeah.
And there are
No.
plenty of people. So this is one of the things, and after this, I'm gonna have to wrap this up because it's getting late. But so one of the things that really upsets me is when I see these like completely leftist people who like obviously don't really believe in God and don't believe in the Bible and don't believe in any of that stuff, but they dress themselves up in
Mm.
the most religious clothing that they can find, right? And with their rainbow this and rainbow that and everything, right? And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of drag queens,
Mm.
because they're taking the most garish and stereotypical and empty representations of religion and turning it into a kind of game, right?
Mm.
And so it reminds me of drag queens.
Yeah. I have to like when you say this, I'm not coming up with anything in my head for an example of this, so I press I have to see one. I haven't seen
Look in the meme channel every
like
once
in
in
the
a
like in
while.
look in
In
the
the meme
meme
channel,
channel.
yeah, on
Oh
the
yeah.
Discord, every once in a while, like there's, and reform rabbis do this a lot, and I know I'm reform bashing, but that's what I do. Like they will
Wait,
wear.
before you say this, come back to this, but what, so how would I describe, you know, I know you said heretic, but really, what kind of like Jew would you say you are?
Okay, so you said that your friend is an Ashkenazi Reform Jew,
Mm-hmm.
and to in a similar manner, you would say that I'm Sephardic as opposed
Mm.
to Ashkenazi, because I come from the Middle East, and I the synagogues I go to are Orthodox, but I'm not an observant Orthodox Jew, right? So there's a bit of confusion where people think the more Orthodox you are, the more religiously observant you are, which
Mm.
isn't necessarily true. There are Reform people who are very religiously observant of the things that they are very religious about. Of course, Reform, the joke is they believe in at most one God. um, and so for me, I am not very observant. I don't go to synagogue as nearly as much as I certainly don't go every week, but the synagogue I don't go to is Orthodox. So that's why I said it's kind of hard, and it depends on the context, right? So you could, in some contexts, call me messianic. It because of the context. I generally, if somebody asks me, I'll just say I'm Jewish, right? Because vast majority of people wouldn't understand any of the other terms I could apply to myself, right? And so for most people, I just say I'm Jewish. If they themselves know some sort of differentiation, then I can start placing myself. But being a congregation of one, it's kind of difficult. When you think of an Orthodox Jew, that's not going to apply to me. I'm somewhat stereotypically Sephardic, I would say, but most people don't know what a Sephardic Jew is.
Yeah. No, I get, okay.
Okay, so I have to go. What did you want to finish this off with?
No, I don't have a point that I want to finish off with. I'm glad you take the initiative to travel, which I think is a virtue itself, to travel and see all the people at the Discord, and all the people of Bridges. I mean, not all, but like, just come and see it. And I think we should do that more often and see each other in person. And I like that you take the initiative to do these videos, because I like doing them and I just get caught up in different things. So having you kind of
So everybody who wants to join our new PVK fraternity has to contact Anthony, because he's going to be the first, whatever we decide to call the PVK fraternity, master, worshipful master of
first potentate.
Yeah, the first potent grand poobah.
Yeah, the first grand poobah of the organization. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Hold on.